Hello and welcome back to The Movies Made Us Do It. Me and Matt are back. How are you, Matt?
I'm pretty good, sir. How are you?
I am well. The Rock is a film. It feels...
Bye, everybody.
Goodbye. It feels really weird talking positively about a Michael Bay movie, but here we are with what I consider his best work, honestly.
I think so.
And that may be small praise, I don't know. I genuinely enjoy The Rock as a movie. It's very silly, but it's very fun, and I think Michael Bay's best movies are the movies that suit his stupidness.
Yeah.
And this is one of those movies, you know?
Yes. I mean, anything with the military in.
Yeah, he loves the military. He was the perfect director for this film, for sure. Yeah. And also, this is a time, aside from the bloody car chase, where he's not too crazy with his shaky cam. It's mostly watchable. The action's pretty well directed in this. It's only the car chase that's got aggressive shaky cam.
He still does a lot of the
quick pans.
That pan round.
Yeah, he loves the pans, doesn't he? Yeah.
Which is really good when it's. I mean,
occasionally.
The cage. The one in the cage of Cage during the chase.
Yeah, that works.
That one is awesome.
Yep.
It's just fucking brilliant, that one. But he uses it too much everywhere, and it's like you don't need to do that. It's like chucking everything in all the time. Yeah,
it's like he's got this toy box and he can't resist. You know, that kind of summarizes Michael Bay for me. Yeah. Like he's like a kid with a toy box, and he can't help but smash all these toys together, which is basically, Transformers movies. Smash the toys together. Yeah. But anyway, the
thing I've always liked about him is that he's always made no bones about the movies that he makes.
No, he's honest about it.
He says, why make it for adolescent boys and young men who want to see people get blown up and smashes and explosions and.
Which annoys me far less than someone like Zack Snyder, who kind of pretends like he's the second coming of Christ, and there's so much depth and meaning to my direction. It's I
love Zack Snyder, but also he is such a pretentious twat sometimes.
That gets my back up, to be honest. Sucker Punch just annoy. I know you quite like Sucker Punch.
I love Sucker Punch. Honestly, I don't care what anybody says.
Oh no.
It's massively problematic.
I know people that love that movie. I know people that love that movie. I hate how pretentious that movie is. Yeah, it pretends to be so much more than what it is. And I feel like if Michael Bay had directed it, he would have just been honest about it, and it would just be like, look.
I just want to see a load of girls in little outfits running around with swords and guns.
And if that was your thing, if that was your angle, it would be far less offensive to me than trying to make out that there's some deeper meaning to all of this nonsense on screen,
But part of me does think, only with that one, that there is meaning in that movie.
There is, but it's still really shallow meaning.
Yes, of course.
There is a story. It's nothing revolutionary. It's nothing new, and it's really basic and shallow. But fine, yes. There is a greater story there. Absolutely.
But I have got a real soft spot for that movie.
Well, that's fine, man. I love Highlander and Godzilla and Tron. I'm not going to argue with people who like what they like. I'm not
sure you can compare those. You're talking about decent classic movies.
Well, no. I will stand. I will absolutely stand by the original Godzilla movie as one of the best films of all time.
Absolutely.
But I mean, I also like Godzilla versus Megalon. So whatever.
Do you think Michael Bay reined it in a little on is it 13 Hours?
Yes, he did.
It's still very sort of
it's military
explosions and military, but I think it's a little more sort of compact than a lot of his other ones.
It is. I think in his later stuff he tends to I think now that he can actually get actual military people, because the military love him, I think
the military know they're going to make me look good.
Yeah, I think a lot of the times, because I noticed this in some of the Transformers movies, where it's they're they're terrible, right? But you get some scenes with the military, and you're like, wow, that felt really real for a moment. And I think what he does sometimes is he just gets military people and goes, right, do your job, and I'll film it. Like, pretend you're doing this as a training exercise, and I'll film it. And those scenes always look really good, you know?
Well, look at in this one.
Yeah.
Most of the SEALs and the Marines are real SEALs and Marines. So.
And then Michael Biehn. Yeah.
And then Michael Biehn. Yeah.
Who, by the way, I think this was his last big movie. I was looking at that the other day. Well, in terms of like huge movies, blockbuster movies, it kind of looks like after this he did a movie called like The Meteor or something, and I was like,
I think he got a bit of a reputation, didn't he?
He did, unfortunately, but
I think he became a bit.
I think he became an alcoholic as well, actually. But But I always, Michael Biehn was one of those actors I loved as a kid. I absolutely loved Michael Biehn. He's one of my favourite action stars.
He's like in some of our favourite movies ever made.
Absolutely. So I will always have a soft spot for him, and I think he's great here as Hicks in the 90s. Superb. Love it. I'm all about it. Anyway. I first saw this at home, I think. When did you first see it? Did you see this at home or did you cinema?
I went to the cinema to see this.
Well, you know.
It's the Nick Cage thing for me, I think.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Connery.
Well, see, that's the thing. Nick Cage, I've always been a Nick Cage fan.
Yeah.
You know, since like Birdie and for fuck's sake, Kiss of the Vampire. So I've always had this thing for him, and it was like, oh yeah, he's going to be in a film with Sean Connery. Oh well, then just sign me up.
Yeah.
What more do you need? And then when you factor in Ed Harris and fucking John Spencer and
that
David
I think
Bond,
is
William Forsythe, and
it's the thing that really elevates this film is the acting and the cast. The cast are superb in this film. Like this is like maybe like cast to kind of dumb dialogue ratio is high here. You've got like really good actors who are elevating most of the dialogue in this film.
Yeah, and I think especially with Ed Harris
Harris is awesome in this. I was rewatching it yesterday. I was like, my God, I forgot how good Ed Harris is in this movie. He's amazing.
That role really needed someone like him to pull it 100%. Off.
The whole film falls down if not for
anybody with slightly less gravitas would have made that role really cheesy and really unbearable.
Yes, because the thing is, like, you can see his motivation. He's not the worst written villain. Not really a villain, but you can see his motivations and stuff. Mm-hmm. But good God, if you'd got like someone, I'm trying to think of someone now, like Michael Shannon or someone, just would have cheesed it right up. And
anybody else that's in this movie, I think even Sean Connery wouldn't have been able to pull that off.
No.
I agree. Certainly Cage wouldn't.
No, God, no.
I mean, even now, I think that it would, because the problem with Cage is even when he's doing like in something like Pig, where he is absolutely stunning.
Yeah.
I think the difference is you put him in that general role, and it comes off as slightly unauthentic, I think.
Yes, I agree.
I think you could believe that Ed Harris really was a military man.
Oh yeah.
You can fully embrace that, but I think Nick Cage sometimes. Actually, that's one of the funny things about this movie, and a lot of Nick Cage took this movie basically because he wanted to do an action movie, and he was told, "You're never going to do an action movie. You are not suited for action movies." And basically, he just literally went, "Well, hold my beer.
Hold up, buddy."
Yeah.
Well,
Connery wanted to work with Cage. Do you think, wow, really?
Yeah. Well,
brilliant.
Yeah, I'm not going to complain.
No.
Anyway, we open on a rainy morning in Arlington Cemetery, and we see Ed Harris as Hummel, General Hummel, visiting the grave of his wife. I don't know that they say what she's passed away from. Some illness of some kind.
No, I don't think they would know. I don't think they say.
And he basically says, I miss you, and I'm gonna be an asshole now, and I need to go and do what I need to go and do. Basically,
I've tried to make them listen for years, and they're not. Perhaps this time they'll finally listen.
And he gives up.
And you also get the sort of this whole like comms voiceover that's telling you about some sort of failed mission where basically, they've got left behind.
I think it's like meant to be like a summary of his history of losing the guys that he will then go on to talk about through the years. Because it wasn't like 85 men he lost under his command or something, he says later, I think. So he also gives up his Medal of Honor. He leaves it on the headstone for his wife. He gives it to her.
Because the medals he's got, he's like threatening to like pull him over.
Well, even once they're like, this guy's gonna try and blow up San Francisco where he's gonna like basically poison the whole of San Francisco in the most horrible way possible. They're like, he's a legend. He's a hero. Like even at the Pentagon, they're like, yeah, he's amazing. Actually, we love him.
Yeah.
They list off his medals, and he's like, it's just insane.
Yep.
Anyway, I think later that evening, the rain is still going on. It's been a day of rain now. It's raining at night. This scene is great as well because the way it's lit with the rain and stuff, I think it was a small scale set, but they made it look a lot bigger because of that rain and atmosphere. It kind of hides a lot. Hummel.
So we should mention the fucking music.
Oh, it's so good and so
Christ.
It's incredible. But you also, when you rewatch it, you're like, wow, he used so much of this for Pirates of the Caribbean and like other things that come later. Like there's elements of this here. Although a lot of composers do that. I mean, Danny Elfman's terrible for it. Like he'll do a lot of stuff, and you're like, oh, I've heard that before. Oh, you've done that there. Oh, that's from this. That's from that.
Danny Elfman, but he really does like to reuse stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, we know they all did. I mean, look at James Horner.
I was going to say James Horner because we were talking about that with there was what was it? It was something that had like basically the Wrath of Khan soundtrack, and I can't remember what movie it was.
No, I don't remember off the top of my head, but yeah, I think he used the Wrath of Khan stings in a number of other movies.
I mean, it is awesome, and this stuff is awesome. But yeah, the soundtrack's incredible. And so he basically Hummel takes this his rogue group of Marines to a naval depot under the guise of a training exercise, I think.
Yeah.
And they basically steal a stockpile of rockets.
And what I love is that basically they're using dart guns, aren't they? They're using it.
Yes.
And there's two scenes that really make me laugh. There's one where you've got that scene of that bold guy who rises up into shot. Mm-hmm. And he's like staring intensely right at you with these two pistols, and it's just so
cheesy as fuck. Yeah.
And then there's that other one where
he was like, I am in a Michael Bay movie. Like he was properly. He's the only one that realized he was in a Michael Bay movie.
Yeah, and then they're in the is it the control tower or something? And that poor fucker gets shot and then goes out the window, and you think, well, he's not fucking getting back up, is he?
There is an element of Batman doesn't kill to some of this, where it's like, okay, he might live, but he will never walk again. Like, Anyway, they are here to steal some lovely stuff called VX poison gas. And the launchers, so it's rockets that are armed with this VX gas. I don't know if VX gas is real. I'm guessing it's not. It is it?
It's real. It does not look like that.
Oh.
And it does not have a melting.
Yeah, because this stuff melts your skin and blisters your skin, and then he says at one point you basically break your own back from spasming, and then you puke out your insides.
Yeah,
it's like, whoa.
I think in reality, it asphyxiates you.
Okay, so in reality, it does kill you horribly.
It's fucking unpleasant.
Yeah. But here we actually see the results, right? Because here, one of Hummel's men actually drops it on the way out. He drops one of the balls because they're like in this like string of pearls kind of thing. He drops one, and they lock him in because obviously they have to.
Yeah, they all get out and shut the
door, and you see David Morse as Baxter. Yeah. He's like at the door as this guy's face like melts, and he's like convulsing and choking and asking for help, and he says, "Oh, I'm sorry," and you get that wonderful just that look from Ed Harris is enough.
Yeah,
doesn't say a word, just that look.
It's like that's another notch in his fucking heart.
Yeah, kind of on you this time, buddy, but yeah,
so the VX gas thing, the Chilcott report,
Yes.
So the Chilcot report, for those who don't know, was a report in Britain to do with why we went to Iraq and the weapons of mass destruction and all that sort of stuff. So they received part of the report said that the MI6 got this report about from a new informant saying they were building these weapons and this, and they then discovered that what he's describing sounds an awful lot like this movie. So the information was completely bollocks. It was
The Rock.
Because they knew that this gas isn't stored like that. It's not green. It's not in these little balls or anything like that. But that's how it was being described
in a movie.
Yeah, from the person who was supposed to be their informant was using the information from this.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah. So, meanwhile, or not meanwhile, probably in the next day, in an FBI lab in Washington, Stanley Goodspeed, played by Nicolas Cage, has been called in to look at a package which has been sent to some Bosnian refugees.
You get that cool intro for him as well, which is just him shooting at a target, and then it's got all that little things set up. On effect, very Goonies-esque.
Yeah.
Sort of on effect, and then which ends up frying a hula girl.
Yeah, which he basically says to his friend there that he owes him money, basically, for pulling that off.
Sure. Yeah.
So he's with this dickhead trainee guy who is an idiot. And they go in to inspect this package. So they're kind of sealed in the room. They open the package, and Stanley's being sensible. The trainee is not, and for reasons beyond me, starts fucking around with this doll, and is like, "Dude, you know why you're here, right? You understand what you're doing here? You're literally a virus terrorist expert, bomb disposal expert."
I think you would have thought that somebody like him would have probably been weeded out quite early.
Yeah, you would think he wouldn't get through day one, right?
He's got into a room with a potential deadly thing and starts fucking about.
Starts fucking about with it, and Stanley's immediately like, "Dude, no."
Yeah. He's there with a doll going, "Hello," sort of thing, with waving its little hand, and then all of a sudden,
yeah, this sarin gas basically comes out of the doll's mouth, and basically they determine that this, if this gets out, it's going to destroy the lab, and everyone in the building's going to die, and it's going to be horrible.
The cockroaches they brought in start exploding.
Yes, yeah. They determined that it's melting their suits as well. It's like corrosive. It's almost like all of this is going to come in useful later. But
I mean, the technicians outside the little room, or they're sealing the room they're in.
Well, yeah, of course, yeah.
We're not going to do this. They're not going to make this. So, and he tells the they've got to inject themselves with this stuff before,
Well, this is where I like.
How am I supposed to do this? Look at the size of this needle. You want me to inject this? It's like fucking.
He's like,
you
want me to stick this into my heart?
What gets me though is he completely fucks this up, right?
Yeah.
And then later on, Cage rings him to get information.
I was so confused.
How is that dude not on his fucking ass out the front door?
And even if he wasn't, why would you fucking phone him? Do you not have any other friends in the FBI that could do a phone call for you? Because I wouldn't trust him to do my washing. Like, I
wouldn't trust him to make me a cup of tea.
No. So anyway, we get this moment, which is obviously just for later in the movie, where they have this hypodermic needle which they have to inject in their heart, which I think what the idea is that I don't get it because it doesn't even work in this scene, right? So they're like, you inject this into your heart, and then actually it doesn't even work later. You inject it into your heart and it stops your heart beating and it kills the virus, and then you start again, I think, or something like that.
Is it the adrenaline? Is it the adrenaline basically makes you burn through it or something? I don't know.
Sure. But in both cases, in the case of this and in the case of the VX poison gas as it is depicted in this film, it's melting your fucking skin off. So I don't know why you injecting yourself in the heart is going to stop your skin melting. I was like, okay, you'll live, but you'll have no skin left.
Yeah, it does seem very odd, doesn't it? If that's it's the case that it does have corrosive properties.
Yeah. But in any case, Stanley does manage to save the day at the last second. So he takes the rest of the day off and he listens to the Beatles and he plays some guitar naked.
Yeah.
Why
No,
not?
he's got some pants and vest.
He's got pants on? He doesn't have a vest on. He's topless.
No, I think he's got a vest on, hasn't he?
Has he? Maybe he's got a vest that looks like he's topless. I don't know. I thought he was like meant to be naked, but maybe not. He's just sat there with a guitar anyway, and his girlfriend, girlfriend, Carla comes home. She's got some really good news for him, but she makes the mistake of asking how his day was first.
Got no top on yet. I'm just looking the pictures up.
Okay. She makes the mistake, unfortunately, of not leading with her news.
Yeah.
She asked how his day was.
Yeah. It's just so good. He's there saying about, how awful the world is and how anybody
You'd be mad
brings a kid into this world is just completely wrong and should have terrible things happen to them.
And then he's like, anyway,
what's your news,
dear? What's your news? She's like, I'm pregnant. And he's like, wow. And I love this because she's like, what do you mean, wow? And she's like, you didn't mean what you said just now, did you? He's like, well, I did at the time. And she's like, at the time, it was like 5 seconds ago. He's like, well, gee, a lot's happened since then. It's that kind of, again, it's cheesy, kind of borderline bad dialogue, but the delivery from Cage is perfect.
Cage basically said that he didn't want his character to swear.
He doesn't the whole way through, and I really like that about his character because it kind of shows it kind of shows that he is the innocent one.
Yeah.
In the situations, because even later when things are really tense and crazy, he doesn't swear.
Yeah.
As far as I'm aware, I don't think he swears once.
I think he might use once. I think he swears once, doesn't he?
Oh, maybe.
I can't. I've only watched it again. Watched it the other day.
Because I think even later he's like, let's get some friggin' rockets or something instead of fucking rockets, but maybe not.
I don't think he swears that. I don't think he says the F-bomb.
No. But I can't remember. But anyway, he doesn't swear very much if he does. But anyway, she asks him to marry him. She says, will you marry me? And he's like, yeah. And it kind of cuts away before we get any answer there at that point. So I think we then cut to Alcatraz Island.
Yeah.
With what's his name? What's the character? Bob. Is it Bob?
Yeah.
Who is wonderful. It's like occasionally you get those characters. There's like a small part, but it's just great.
Yeah.
And I almost would love to see a day in the life of Bob just doing Alcatraz tours because he's clearly a job's worth and thinks he's amazing, and it's kind of hilarious.
If you look at Ed Harris during any scene where Bob's around, Ed Harris is doing his best to contain a smile.
Yeah.
Because apparently he could not keep a straight face when he was doing any scenes with him.
Yeah, and Hummel really needs to be steely-eyed here and just, serious. This is weird, though, because they turn up and Ed Harris and his kind of captains beneath him are there to basically take hostages. And he tells these kids, he's like, kids, I need you to tell your parents that you need to leave now.
Yeah,
and
it's like a school trip, I think.
Yeah, but it's like, what do you think the result of that is going to be?
Yeah.
Like, you've told these kids that they need to tell their teachers to go home. Two outcomes. The teachers are going to be like, shut up, you're a student, and we're doing a school trip. Or you're going to be like, which weirdo told you that? Mm-hmm. That's concerning.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, I don't know what you were expecting to happen in this situation, Ed Harris.
If you're doing that, you're not going to keep it secret.
No.
Because anybody that leaves the island is, and was told, hey, we left the island, they're going to tell people.
Yeah. But anyway, he tells them, and we never see them again, so I guess it worked.
I mean, it's literally just there to make us go, oh, he doesn't want the
he's
kids
good
to
guy. He's good guy, really.
Yeah.
So anyway, they seize control of Alcatraz. But there's this wonderful moment when Bob's like, hey, I invite you all to become prisoners temporarily, and he puts them all in the jail cells, and then that's when Hummel turns up with his captains and is like, Bob, change of plan. And we get these great people who are like, if I knew this was gonna go, he's like, I love the woman who's like, don't you have a gun? He's like, no, I'm not allowed to carry a gun. And she's like, fuck, I've got a gun. If I knew this was gonna happen, I would have brought my gun. And the other guy is like, what kind of fucked up tour is this?
Yeah.
Again, silly lines, but delivery is everything.
Mm-hmm.
Even the bit parts kind of work for me in this movie. They always make me smile anyway. So yeah, basically he then I think this is the point where we meet his commanders under him, his captains, and he's like, hey, you guys, I've worked with you through many campaigns, and you're all my my closest allies. And you two shifty fuckers, I've never worked with before, but I'm sure you'll be fine.
Yeah,
it's like, okay, is it Fry and Darrow, Tony Todd, and some other guy?
Yeah. Is it Gregory Spilorder?
Spleeder, yeah, or Splorder, yeah. They're like both like clearly the bad guys, clearly the real bad guys.
I mean, you just know as soon as they turn up. It's like
he's just obvious from the start. He's like, I've worked with you guys. You're my brothers in arms, and you two other captains. I'm sure I can trust you. I've never worked with you before.
Hear the Sesame Street. That Sesame Street. Yeah. One of these things is not like the others.
Yeah.
One of these things is doing their own thing.
Yeah. But anyway, 81 tourists are held hostage on Alcatraz, which might mean that Hummel didn't lose 81 people under his command. I think that's where I got that number from. Got the numbers confused. Anyway, 81 tourists are held hostage, and they phone the FBI. They phone, what's his name? What is his name? Womack. John Spencer's Womack. He calls, he gets the call and is basically told, right, this is what we're going to do. We've got these VX poison gas rockets. We're going to launch them at San Francisco unless the government paid the ransom. And basically the whole point is that, as he then says, like, his receptionist, like, yeah, I'll cancel all your appointments for the rest of the day. And he's like, yeah, you might want to get one of the Pentagon as well, all right? Because, bad things going down. And they all meet at the Pentagon and have this conversation. He basically says, the Marines under my command did illegal clandestine operations in countries where they shouldn't have been. They died during the process of doing this, and no reparations were paid to their family. No medals were distributed. The families were given some bullshit story. These black ops basically never happened. So he feels there's been a massive injustice done to the people under his command who died heroically to protect the country, right? He basically demands this ransom. It's like 100 million, I think, and $1 million was going to go to each of the families, and the rest of, I guess the 19 million was going to go wherever he wants. Obviously to everyone under him, basically, under his command.
Yeah.
So they're,
It is 83 Marine families.
Oh, it is. There's 81 hostages, 83 Marine families. That's quite a close number. It's kind of odd. But yes, so
I like the just that was he the Secretary of Defense or something? He's like reading out all this stuff, and he says, "Oh, we didn't even recognize we went into China." And it's like, who's that fucking idiot?
It's like, how old are you? You asshole.
You clearly don't know shit.
Yeah, doesn't he tell him to, like, they're like, break out the fucking tape and tape that guy's mouth shut. He's wasting my time. He's just like, young FBI guy who was just there to.
I think he's a cabinet minister, isn't he?
Oh yeah, sorry, you're right. Yeah, he is. Yeah, he's just a young cabinet guy. Yeah. So anyway, they're like, well, what are we going to do? He's taken control of Alcatraz, and no one's ever escaped from Alcatraz. So how do we know how to get in? And I think this is the point where Womack, or no, not Womack, Paxton says, Paxton says there may be someone, and Womack's like,
no, it's not Paxton. It's the other old dude. I don't know what he's called.
I thought it was.
No, there's another really old guy in there, isn't there?
I thought it was William Forsythe who suggests.
No, he doesn't, because he doesn't know who he is.
Oh no, you're right. He doesn't know who he is. So anyway, someone suggests it, and then Womack's like, no. But obviously,
no.
Overruled. And we then see that Goodspeed is making love to his possible wife to be on the roof, and he gets a phone call. Mid-sex, and like every person in a film stops to answer the phone.
I do know. I love the. She's like, "Do you like the pigtails?" He's, "Oh yes, very naughty."
Yeah. He basically says like, "Okay, be outside in 30 minutes," and she's like, "What the fuck, Stanley? What are you doing?"
Yeah.
And he's like, "Look, it's probably a training exercise. I will marry you. Why didn't you come to San Francisco? It's, like I said, it's a training exercise. Nothing to worry about."
Yeah.
Which is weird because you're like, it's a training exercise and they told you to be downstairs in 20 minutes. That seems a bit more than a training exercise. But maybe the FBI do that. I don't know. Maybe their training exercises are like, we need to test this end to end as if it is an emergency. So, we're going to call you out of the blue and, go for it. So he tells his wife to be, Carla, to meet him there and heads off. He is greeted by Paxton, played by William Forsythe, who again great in this role, really like him, and Womack, played by John Spencer, and they basically brief him on the situation. They're like, no, this is not a training exercise, my friend.
He says to him, what do you know about the gas? And he says a word that I'm not sure is a real word.
Oh, go on.
This is one of those things that we hope we could disinvent.
Is dis one of those things that you can put in front of anything to something? It might be one of those,
It just sounds wrong.
It sounds wrong. It might be one of those, it sounds wrong, but it's probably one of those weird things with language where it's like, it sounds wrong, but it is technically accurate. And,
uninvent sounds right.
Yes.
Disinvent sounds weird, but it's probably right.
I think it makes sense, but it sounds wrong. I agree. They tell him, no, this is real. He then meets, is this where they meet Michael Biehn briefly?
Yeah.
And they're talking because he asks for the gun, doesn't he? And he's like, why? Like, other guy's like, why? Yeah. He's like, you're a chemical freak, and he's like, well, I may be a chemical super freak, but I still need a gun.
Yeah, I do like that, chemical super
freak. So then they meet with Michael Biehn, who's in his full Navy attire, dressed to the nines, showing all of his medals as he gives his briefing.
Bay really does like to show off the whole sort of uniform medal stuff, doesn't it?
Hell yeah, he loves all this stuff. He basically says, this is what they need to do. They need to head into and free the hostages, neutralize the warheads from Alcatraz, and they need someone with first-hand physical knowledge of the layout of Alcatraz. And basically, maybe previously that didn't happen, and now this is where it comes up, or does it come up again that they need someone? And basically, either way, Womack is basically forced to get John Mason, played by Sean Connery, who is an unofficial prisoner held without trial. John Mason.
I do like the other guy says, I think, I'm not sure it's this particular bit or it's just a little bit later when they're talking about sending him in, and he says if he hits the streets, he's like a deadly weapon. He's like, he's 60.
Yeah.
He's like this. He's like our age. He says, I've got to get up 2 times a night to pee.
Piss, yeah. So they basically take Mason out of prison.
His introduction, what a fucking...
Oh, it's great because you get it's
like the darkest, deepest hole cell that they could find, and it's like he's there with his long hair over his eyes and
reading some philosophy or something. Yeah.
They wheel him out in all these like massive chains.
Yeah, because he's walking with all the chains and stuff.
Yeah, it's like, Jesus Christ, what is he, the Juggernaut? It's like, fucking hell.
And they sit him in this room with the one-sided mirror and or two-sided mirror, sorry. No, one-sided. Yeah, one-sided. They sit him there, lock him to the table, and they send someone in to start talking to him.
Goes in first, doesn't he? And he's a real dick to him.
Yeah.
It's like I don't like you, and you don't like me, sort of thing. And you think, Jesus Christ, that seems
that's no way to win this person
unnecessary.
over. Yeah, yeah, and unsurprisingly, it doesn't go well. He basically just says he wants to go to a hotel and you know have a great time.
Yeah, and a haircut. Womack says, "You Goodspeed, you go," and it's like, what?
Why?
Why would you send Goodspeed?
Because it's weird as well because they're like. He's like, not only do Goodspeed go in there, right, for no apparent reason he sends Goodspeed in, but it gets worse because he also makes Goodspeed promise that he won't say anything about what he's actually there to do. And it's like, he's the chemical weapons expert. Like, why are you sending him in if you don't want him to say anything about why he's there? And this is so unnecessarily complex. You're making this way worse. Anyway, he sends him in, and you know, as only Nick Cage can do, he plays awkward amazingly well in this scene. When he comes in, he's like, "I'm with the FBI. I'm Stanley Goodspeed." Of course you are.
Of course you are.
And basically, you know, immediately John Mason, played by Connery, has just got Nick Cage wrapped around his finger. He's like, "I want coffee," and he's like, "Oh yeah, I was just about to get you coffee." He's like,
no,
and also
he says coffee. He
says, "Oh no, thank you."
He says, "No, offer me a coffee."
And then he's like, "Oh, you know, take these chains off as a gesture of good faith." And Womack's like, "No."
Oh, don't fucking take the chains off, for fuck's sake.
But of course, Cage...
You fucking sent him in, you idiot.
Yeah, you sent him in, and he's doing the best he can. And to be fair, he gets the result.
We did miss when Forsyth leaves. He chucks him a quarter to pay.
Oh, yes, yeah, to ring.
Make a phone call.
Yeah. Yes, yeah, because he says the line about getting out where you've still got a little lead left in your pencil and you're still vertical.
Yeah.
So then he chucks him a quarter, you're right, sorry. And so Goodspeed basically manages to get him to sign the contract on the understanding that he gets to go to the hotel, he gets a shave and a suit, and you know, Goodspeed suggests he gets his hair cut because it's like a grunge thing. He's like,
and I like there's also, he says while he's signing it, he says in Latin, was it beware of Greeks bearing gifts?
Yes, and prior to that he was talking about people who were wrongly accused. He was saying, "Oh, I feel like this person and that person," and
Goodspeed translates it.
Archimedes and stuff.
Is an educated man? And he says that rules out you being a field agent.
Oh, and he says you're probably wondering why you're here. I think it's Forsyth that says it. He's like, "Well, I've been in prison longer than Nelson Mandela, so maybe you want me to run for president."
Yeah, that's brilliant.
But yeah, so he manages to get him to sign on that understanding, and I love because Goodspeed leaves and they're all bitching at Goodspeed. And it's like, but he got him to sign it. He's got him on board, right?
Yeah. And of course, Womack immediately tears it up.
Yes, and you see Mason backed up to the glass, and he's really suspicious, and I can't believe no one notices while they were having the conversation.
He's used the leg of the chair to sort of
flatten the coin.
Yeah. The edge of the coin, isn't it? And he basically...
But you'd think at the point that he was backed up against the glass, they would have come in and been like, "No, sit the fuck back down."
Yeah.
But yeah, so he uses the coin to scratch around the mirror and then breaks it in, sees Womack, and you immediately realise, okay, he immediately recognises Womack.
He really fucking hates Womack.
Yeah. And yeah, so you know, I think just before that, actually, Goodspeed mentions, he's like, you know, it's interesting that all of those people were wrongly accused. Yeah. All of the people that he was quoting, like Nelson Mandela and Archimedes, and they were all wrongly imprisoned.
And he also protests when he rips the paper out. He says, you know, that's a official document.
Isn't that illegal, sir? He's like,
yeah. Like, it doesn't exist. Fuck him, basically.
Yeah.
It's what, you know.
But anyway, he gets his suite in the Fairmount Hotel, which is lucky because the amount of time he's been in prison, it might have been a hotel that wasn't even open anymore, but he found one that was still there. And he pretends to be singing in the shower, or he is singing in the shower.
One of the worst.
I think he's doing it on purpose though, just to really piss people off. Because he's not even doing it in time with the song. It's all like completely out of time and everything. It's amazing. And while he's doing that, he finds some like shower curtain rope, I think, or something. I'm not quite sure what it's there for.
I think it's a cord for hanging your washing on.
Oh, is that what it is? Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, that does make sense.
To like for drying towels, maybe, or something.
Yeah. So he gets that, and he also finds that there's a phone right next to the shower. So he phones for room service.
Yeah.
Yeah, like all of it.
All the room service.
All of the room service. So basically he orders all of this food. Then the hairdresser turns up. And is told not to use any scissors, and he's like, "You joking? Would you tell Picasso no brush?"
Yeah.
And he's like, "This man could kill you with scissors." And then Mason turns up behind him. He's like, "Oh, come on! I couldn't cut his balls off with a pair of clippers, now could I?" And they head out onto because he said, "Oh, let's go out on the balcony." Obviously, because he's ordered all this food for the room, which would look really awkward. So they go out on the balcony to get the haircut, and the hairdresser's like, "Oh, he's not very nice, is he?" And Womack, who stood right in front of them, he's like, "No, he's not. He's not very nice." So the room service turns up, and you've got that one guy who's like, "We're meant to be doing our jobs," and everyone else is like, "It's free food. I'm eating food. If it's free, I'm eating it." And he basically says to Womack, he's like, what promise have I got that you're going to actually follow through and release me? As part of the deal, he's going to be released if he does this for them. And Womack says, well, you got my word, which obviously means nothing to Mason.
Yeah, exactly.
But Mason says, will you shake on it? And Womack is stupid enough to actually do it.
Yep.
Which surprises me, considering how cautious he is about about Mason in every other situation. But he does, and of course he wraps the line around his arm, drops him off the building, and is holding on to him. So of course Cage grabs the gun that he now has, aims it at Mason. He's like, "Please don't, please stop."
I didn't even call him Mister or something.
He's like, "Mister." And he's like, "Oh, he's getting heavy. I'll drop him." And he's like, "No, you won't." And does that stupid thing when he cocks the weapon. It's like, do that at the start, buddy. It always bugs me when they do that in the middle of scenes. It's like, wouldn't you go into that situation with it already?
There's so many things that use the cocking of guns like
really awkwardly
once as well. Not in this one, but
I mean, I would let it off here to an extent because it's clear that Cage has not really fired a gun since basic training and stuff. So it's like, okay, maybe he thought of it mid conversation. But like in some films where they do it like mid argument or something, you're like, wouldn't you have got into the situation with it ready? Anyway, he then ties the other end of the line around a chair and just basically lets him go. Obviously, Goodspeed dives for the chair, and Mason makes his escape. Cage calls for help, so obviously all of the security come out. And Womack shouts at the guys for trying to help him up. So you're going to pull my arm out of my socket. It's like, guys, they're trying to help.
Why they didn't hear Womack's
screaming
going over, I don't know.
Yeah. Or Cage shouting.
Yeah.
Because he's like shouting, like, bring him up, But anyway, Mason manages to escape down in the lift, and he's kind of awkwardly stuck with the hairdresser for a moment.
Yeah, he's like in the corner, and I love
oh shit.
He says, "I only have one thing to say.
Are you happy with your hair?
Are you happy with your hair?"
Yeah. So he gets out and he steals a Hummer, which I love because the guy phones him.
Yeah.
He's like, "What the fuck are you doing with my Hummer?"
What I know is, I'm sure when he phones him, he's speaking German.
It's some other language.
And he just answers him.
In English, though.
In English,
yeah. So anyway,
that dude as well gets his car stolen in National Treasure.
Oh, really? The same guy?
No less.
Huh. Interesting. Didn't know that. So anyway, Goodspeed heads out in pursuit, finds a big yellow Ferrari. And
we get all that the chase scene through the hotel.
Through the hotel, yeah.
Lots of crashing plates and going for kitchens.
And then it's like, Goodspeed steals this Ferrari.
Yeah.
And it's like, fine. That is very fast. You will catch up to this black Humvee very quickly. I don't know what you're planning to do with a Ferrari at that point, though, because it's a Hummer. Like, what are you going to do if you actually catch him?
Isn't the Ferrari like ridiculously low? Is it not completely unsuited for
everything they're doing?
Stuff?
Yeah,
it's just going to get the bottom of that is just going to get fucked in minutes.
This is the Michael Bay style over logic.
I mean, we are really being picky here, but.
This scene actually, I love the idea of the chase, but it is one of those scenes of like way too much shaky cam, kind of almost ruins it. There are some good shots, but God, some of the shakiness.
Shots. There's, I mean, some of the like taking out the water truck and the usual cliches of taking things out. And that it works so well because it's just well done, I think, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And that music as well, as you said, the music in this scene is incredible. That action music is so pacey, and it kind of makes everything feel faster and more kind of action packed than it really is, probably. But anyway, after derailing a tram.
Yeah, that poor dude is like clearly loves his tram.
He's like, that motherfucker ain't safe nowhere.
Yeah, he is not safe nowhere.
When I find him, he's dead, man. But anyway, he manages to make good speed. He kind of like crashes Ferrari, and then the tram comes down the hill.
The explosion on the tram when it gets blown into the air is ridiculous.
Yeah, everyone's dead.
I mean the jet of flame that projects it into the air is fucking absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
It just looks so fucking good.
Yeah, it looks good, but it is it's like everyone's dead. Anyway, the Ferrari gets crushed. Goodspeed manages. He gets trapped by the airbag at first, doesn't he? He manages to shoot the airbag and get out of the car just in time. Ferrari gets crushed, and this kid turns up and he's like, "Oh, dude, you fucked up your Ferrari."
Yeah, Mr. Chad.
He's like, Goodspeed's like, it's not mine, and neither's this, and kicks him off his bike and steals his bike. Then he phones his FBI mate, and he's like, his FBI mate again is just being cocky and arrogant. He's like, "Look, I just stole this kid's bike. I'm not feeling good about myself. Just answer the question," because he wants to find out where who John Mason is.
His family, he's trying to find out the transfer papers. He looks at and he said, "There's no name on them."
But they find Jade, right, his daughter.
Yeah, basically there's no name, but there is a next of kin sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. And so we discover that it's Jade, and presumably they did set this up reasonably well, that the Hummer had a phone in it.
Yeah.
Fine. She did drop everything she was doing and find her friend to meet him immediately. Very, very fast.
Yeah.
But fine. I guess she had nothing on that day. And they meet with her friend, and he's like, "Were you scared to see me and alone?" And she was like, "Yeah." But then she tells her friend that it's okay, and they start to reconcile somewhat. She is angry, obviously. Wasn't it like a Rolling Stones gig or something? Led Zeppelin. It was a Led Zeppelin gig.
3.
And that's where she was conceived, and then of course he was rearrested. This was one of his escape attempts. And Mason says, he kind of clearly wants to get to know her, and she's like, "Well, Yeah,
he says you're literally the only piece of evidence of my existence.
Yeah. And Goodspeed's caught up at this point. He followed Jade, right? I think to the meeting point.
Yeah, he got her address and he followed her from her house.
And he's listening as the FBI pull up in 1,000 cars. The whole city of San Francisco's FBI and police turn up. And she
says, "Is this you?" And
he kind of nods.
Yeah.
But then Goodspeed's like, "Oh, FBI, ma'am, he's helping us on a case." And it's like, this is a nice moment. But then moments later, they cuff him. And I'm like, if she looks around... I mean, A, it's not convincing anyway. Because why did they turn up in that fashion if they were just there to go along with him? And then also they immediately cuff him. And it's like, if she looks around, she's going to immediately see that was clearly bullshit.
It kind of... But I think
it's a nice scene.
It gets a pass because it's really sweet.
It is sweet,
and it's
And he says, "Oh, thank you. You didn't have to do that." And he's like, "Why don't we skip the bullshit, a-hole?"
Yeah, and it's also you get that thing where he says, "Well, gee whiz, John, shall we go?"
Yeah, he's like, "Well, gee whiz, Don, it's getting late." So
it's from like a 40s cartoon, isn't it?
Yeah, he kind of is. So they head to the mission briefing, and Goodspeed is telling them, look, this is really bad, dangerous stuff, and I need to show you how to do it. And Michael Bihn's character's like, nah, that's why we don't have to be shown. They string it out. On purpose, I think. They're like, nah, there's no need for that. And he's like, oh, I think there is a need. It's really dangerous. It's like, well, you're coming with us. And of course, he promptly runs to the toilet and pukes. And
this is where we see that Forsyth isn't a complete asshole.
No, he's nice. Yeah, he goes to check on him and he says, are you all right? And talks him through it. He says, I've got a girlfriend and daughter waiting, daughter yet to be born.
Yeah.
In San Francisco. I told him to come to San Francisco. And then we get the scene with Mason where they're going through the blueprints. And he's like, where do you go? Where do we go after this? And he's like, oh, I don't know. He's like, oh, don't worry, I'll know when we get there.
So, it's all in my head. It's like,
yeah,
you're not fucking going.
Which is weird because it's like, well, like even
well, he says, well, what the fuck did we get him out for?
Yeah, what did we get him out for if that wasn't going to be always the thing, if that wasn't always going to be the plan? And he's like, well, look, the plans for Alcatraz were in my head. He was like, doesn't he say I spent 3 days in the dark waiting for the right moment for the tides to be right to get out? You know, like he can't see it from a plan. He needs to be there to actually see it. So of course he is also coming to Alcatraz.
Bing does say, if you do anything to endanger my men, I will basically end you.
Yeah, which is fair enough.
Yeah, and he, Mason for his part just looks, well, fine, that sounds fine.
That seems reasonable. Yeah. And also he does have a fear of water. Goodspeed. He's scared of water as well. So he's like the worst person for this job. No combat training, scared of water. But I think he agrees because he realizes that his daughter, her life is at risk. So he's like, he's going to do it.
He's literally the only person that can do what they're asking.
Well, you don't want to send that other asshole.
Yeah,
let's just start fucking around with the rocket and kill everyone. So on the way, Goodspeed phones his wife. Is like, don't go to San Francisco, and she's like, no, I'm coming, get fucked.
Yeah, she just hangs up on him, doesn't she?
And Mason's like, who is that? And Goodspeed's like, it was on a need to know basis, you don't need to know.
Yeah. And he
classified. Yeah.
Well, we should also mention that the countermeasures for the gas
is napalm usually, right?
They're gonna have they're sort of basically making thermite rockets.
Yeah.
So that the Air Force can basically black carpet bomb the
island.
The island.
Yeah. So they head to the island. They send diversionary aircraft to distract while the SEALs go in, under cover of radar. Of course, Hummel knows exactly what they're doing. He's like, they're diversions. He knows all of the tricks, right?
Yeah, they're going to the west of the island. There's east of the island, whichever it is. So they'll basically start going down there.
But they dive in on these little underwater little mini sub things.
Yeah.
And they head to the island, which is really funny because later on, I'm assuming it's done for he did it as I don't know why he did it. It's kind of weird, but later on, Mason's like, oh, the last time I tried to swim this, and it's like, dude, you got those little submarines there, and then at the end, Goodspeed's like, oh yeah, the submarine will be there. And it's like, Mason should at that point, Mason should have been like, bollocks, I could have left all along.
yeah,
it was already there. I forgot. I'm old and senile. So they get there and they travel through the catacombs. That's the plan, to avoid detection. And they find this this area where there's, for reasons unknown, just fire and
some
spinny
sort of
devices and like
massive boiler.
Don't know what it does.
Mechanical.
Yeah.
Control room thing.
Still running on Alcatraz, which is basically shut down. Beside having the odd tour, but for some reason this death trap is there, for no reason other than to make Mason look like a badass. And he does.
To give Mason
it
something
works.
to do basically.
Yeah, and of course we need the "Welcome to the Rock" for the trailer.
Yes.
Which
I mean that is fucking cool.
That is very cool. As only Sean Connery can deliver, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he does this. They're like, doesn't Michael Biehn? He's like, oh well, thank you, Mr. Mason. You've led us into a dead end. And Mason's like, oh, you know, I'll go through there. And they're like, are you insane? And then the other guy's like, look, boss, I know you told me to stick with him at all times, but like, really? And Michael Biehn's like, no, you stay here.
Yeah, you stand down, it's fine.
And of course Mason rolls through perfect. They're like, where did you find this guy? I love that Goodspeed loves like occasionally when he can look like a badass. Like you feel like he really gets off on it when he can pretend to be a badass. Because later on he really fucks with Mason when it comes to the chemicals. Mm-hmm. You feel like he's got that power trip now. He's like, for once, I'm the expert in this situation.
It's the only
I can shit you up.
What he's doing.
Yeah. So yeah, he manages to get through and he opens the door for them. He shows them through the catacombs. He's like, no, don't go that way. Go this way. That takes us to the shower room, I think, isn't it? That's where they're trying to get to.
Yeah.
So the plan is they're going to find the rockets one by one and basically start taking the guidance chips out. But I'm trying to think. They do disable some, don't they? I think.
No, not yet.
Do they not disable any of them yet?
I don't think they do.
Okay, that's fine. So yeah, they head in under the ground, but of course we did miss a scene where one of the guys is like, oh, I've got this. One of Hummel's guys, one of his captains says, oh, I've got this special device which no one knows about. It's this custom made motion tracker, so you know, this motion sensor, so they won't be expecting it, and if that trips, we'll know that, you know, we've got SEALs. And of course they're already expecting SEALs anyway, so they're already on high alert because they saw the diversionary planes, and
they've got the sort of the normal measures with sort of like lasers and things set up.
Yes.
This sort of like, you know, this extra bit of kit.
Yeah.
It's sort of like a weird little light bulb.
Yes. And so they tried to sneak in, but of course they trip this custom made device which alerts them. The SEALs enter into the shower room, but they are basically caught in from an elevated position with all of Hummel's guys. Mm-hmm. Now Mason, Goodspeed, and sidekick guy, other guy, the one SEAL, are still down in the hall when this takes place, so they haven't gone up. And Hummel turns up and he's like, look, we've got you in an elevated position, you're screwed. And even the other SEALs are like, we're fucked. We're not getting out of this. But of course Michael Bihn's character is like, you know, you all agreed to serve this country, and he's like, oh, look, I agree with you, Hummel, but this is what we signed up for. Yeah, you know,
with all enemies, domestic and foreign and domestic.
Yeah. And like, there is kind of an element of like, what I do like about this is you can see Ed Harris's character Hummel. You can see his motivations even if you disagree with them. You know. Yeah. He's not just villain man.
No, I think that's one of the main reasons why this movie is so good. Is because the bad guy isn't just a snarly villain. I mean, you've got two snarly villains.
Yeah, you do. They're
not the main bad guys.
That's the thing. The snarly villains don't outstay their welcome. They're only there for a little bit. They don't outstay their welcome. And it's fine, you know. Plus, Tony Todd gets an awesome death scene. Which we'll get to very shortly.
Well, so does the other dude, to be honest.
The other dude does too, but I love the Rocket Man bit. It's just funny. Because you're like, how did you not put this together, Tony Todd?
Yeah, you're not. Yeah,
you're stood in front of it. But anyway, so they end up opening fire, and all of the SEALs are wiped out. One of them is obviously Goodspeed and Co. are down below. One of them is still breathing, and this is where you, if it wasn't clear enough already that Tony Todd's an asshole, him and his mate, they're like, oh, one's alive, and Tony Todd's immediately about to shoot him in the face, with a smile on his face.
Yeah.
And Hummel's like, holster that sidearm, Captain. But of course the guy dies in Hummel's arms. Hummel grabs the camera though, and he speaks to the FBI. Or the Pentagon, and basically says, like, damn you for forcing me to do this. More of my brothers have died now because of this.
Yeah. This
was unnecessary. You should just meet my demands. And he's like, no, you've now got 3 hours or a couple of hours or something. The SEAL that was with them tries to head up at the last minute to help. He gets shot, but he kind of falls and is hanging in the ladder, right? He gets caught on the ladder. So Mason basically takes all of his gear and fucks off. Goodspeed follows after him, basically saying, where are you going? And Mason's like, I nearly died here several times. I'm leaving. I'm not dying here. He's like, I've got a daughter to see. And of course, Womack contacts Goodspeed.
They realise that the
I guess they're tracking them, aren't they?
Yeah, the control realizes that there's 2 of them left alive, and they call for Goodspeed, and he's like, he's got a gun now, so it's like, well,
what have you got, a water pistol?
Go and stop him, do something.
He's like, what have you got, a water pistol? So he goes after him, and he's like, look, let me come clean. I am a chemical weapons specialist. I've got a daughter on the way. Wife to be is in San Francisco. Your daughter's in San Francisco. This stuff will literally kill everyone in San Francisco if it gets into the atmosphere. It will murder the lot of them, including your daughter, including my wife and my daughter, right? And so, he is convinced reluctantly to help. Yeah. Oh no, he's not, is he? Really? He's still trying to.
Not before he takes the gun off him. I love that when he says to him, he's Goodspeed, what's going on? He's like, he's got my gun. He's got all the guns now.
Now he's got all the guns. Yeah. Of course it's broken up because the bad guys have realized that there might be more alive, and they hear them arguing.
They pull up the guy in the ladder, and they realize his kit's gone.
That's right. Sorry, yeah, that's the giveaway, isn't it? And, they start dropping like C4 thermite or something down into the hole, and of course, Mason immediately sees it and tells Goodspeed to run. Big explosions and all of that.
Yeah, I think Connery didn't like that stuff very much. I think that was a bit too scary, that one.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
No, that's true.
It's a lot of fire.
Yeah. But anyway, they do manage to start disabling the rockets one by one. And I think they get down to like 2, don't they? It's pretty soon. I know they disable the first like 13 of them really fast, and there's like 2 left.
They don't even sort of tell you what happened. They just sort of, they're all done.
They're done. Okay. Yeah, it's fine. But anyway, so there's a bit of a firefight where we kind of see how badass Mason is, basically. And you get that great scene where he's like taking the guidance chip out of one of the things, and he's like, is that normal? And Mason's like, what? The leg thing? And his leg's twitching. He's like, yeah, it happens. And Goodspeed's like, can you just do something about it? He's like, what do you want me to do? Kill him again?
Connery and Cage are fucking amazing.
Their chemistry is awesome in this.
They are so fucking good together.
They really are. You get the impression that they both clearly wanted to work with each other and work really well off each other. Totally. They're awesome. You also get the I can't remember what order any of this bit happens. There's like this bit of action and disabling of rockets, but you get that great gunfight when Mason's like firing and he's like, "Stop firing at the rockets! Fire at the people! Avoid the rockets!"
And I love the bit when he takes he's explaining to Mason about the how the thing where, and he takes out the string of beads and he gives it to him.
This is where he gets his like power trip for a moment.
He's talking to him and like Mason just moves slightly. He goes, "Don't move that."
Yeah, and you know he's doing it because this whole time he's been the one that's scared. He's been the one that's made to look like an idiot by everyone around him, all the Marines, all the SEALs, and Mason. And now it's the one time where he could be like, "Hey, I know about this. This is the one thing I know about that you don't know about." And Mason looks terrified because Mason's like, "What will it do?" And then Cage is like, reeling off this like horrendous list of, because he says like, I'm sure he says something like, "Your back will break from so much spasming, and you'll puke out your organs."
Yeah, basically.
After your skin melts off. It's like, wow, that is thorough.
Like, lovely.
Definitely dead. So basically the idea is he's going to remove all the guidance chips. Which will mean they can't fire them. So that's the plan, and that's what they start doing. It's obviously slow work. It's delicate work. So this is why we needed Godspeed to do it, or Goodspeed, sorry. And Mason calls him Godspeed, but there's reasons for that. So they managed to disable 12 of the rockets. There's then the Hendricks goes down. He's ordered to go down with the fire team, and there's the big firefight. And Goodspeed, who is told by Mason not to hesitate, doesn't hesitate too long, as Mason put it, and actually saves Mason's life. Yeah, it's the first time that Goodspeed's killed someone.
Yeah, and he's really, you can see he's really affected by it. He's just killed someone, and it's like, oh, that's, shit, I've just killed someone.
And he's like, "How do you do it?" And Mason's like, "I was trained by the best."
Yeah. And again, what is that fucking area? What it's like fucking Temple of Doom.
I know.
Alcatraz. It's,
it's bizarre, isn't it?
You've got like
the mine carts and stuff. You're like, what is this?
I presume it was for laundry or something. I don't know, but it looks like a fucking mine.
Yeah, I don't know.
And I love that bit where Connery goes over and he's suspended from that rope, and Cage goes, John, are you all right? He goes, "Yes, fucking fine, you fucking idiot."
Oh, I love it. But yeah, so he manages to save Mason, which I think wins him over a little bit, and Hendricks basically finds out that his squad have been killed by Mason and Goodspeed. So Hummel basically starts saying, "Right, I'm going to execute hostages, unless the guidance chips are returned to me."
First missile yet?
No, I think they do that in a bit because they get desperate. Because when they fire it is when he diverts it, and then the two bad guys take over, right?
Yeah.
So they've threatened. The time is running down, and I think Tony Todd's character keeps saying like, "Hey, come on, let's fire him." And he's like, "No, not yet. It's not time yet. We've given him time."
Tony Todd's got a pistol in front of him on a revolving stool, and he's just spinning this fucking pistol round. It's like, again, we know this guy's a nut job. Thank you for that.
Yeah. But yes, so he basically threatens to kill hostages, and he gets one of the hostages to kind of talk on the radio to them, and so Mason basically says, "Look, give me the chips." And so Goodspeed, because Goodspeed, you can tell Goodspeed's going to give him up, and he's going to give in, and of course he gives him the chips, and Mason immediately smashes them. He's like, "Right, that's that. Done. Problem solved." And Mason says basically he's going to go and surrender to give Goodspeed time to disable the remaining rockets.
Yeah.
So he heads up to the prison courtyard, and Hummel's like, do you know who I am? And Mason's like, well, only from, I saw highlights of the Vietnam War.
Your highlights reel on telly.
Yeah, and he's like, well, you've got no idea then about losing people under your command. And Mason's like, I don't see how you cherish the dead by killing, 50,000 people. Personally, I think you're a fucking idiot. And he says like the Oscar Wilde quote.
Well, he says that the tree of liberty must be nourished by the blood of patriots and tyrants.
Yes.
And is it Thomas Jefferson? I don't remember which.
I think it's Thomas Jefferson. Yeah.
And he says that patriotism is the
a virtue of the vicious.
Virtue of the vicious, says Oscar
and
Wilde.
Then Humble Bundle like hits him over the back of the head.
Yeah,
and he's like, "Thanks for proving my point." So yeah, he basically hits Mason and gets ready to shoot him, basically.
Meanwhile, you've got Stanley taking apart
He's taking the 13th one apart, I think, at this point.
Well, I think there must be more than two left, because we've got that.
I think it's this one, and then there's two more. So I think
there's one he fires, so there must be.
Oh no, you're right. Sorry, yes, you're right.
One he fires. There's the one on the lighthouse, and then there's the one.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Wherever it is, yeah.
Yeah. So they manage. He's trying to disable a rocket, but he gets captured.
Yeah, I like that the two soldiers come down, and he comes down right in front of him and goes, "Hi, sweetie."
Yeah.
Punch him through a wall.
So meanwhile, with the SEAL team lost, the Pentagon's like, right, get some F-18s. Yeah. And let's just blow up the island of Alcatraz. Yeah. Problem solved.
I think they say the thermite's basically ready, don't they? It's ready to go, waiting to be loaded up now.
Meanwhile, Paxton confronts Womack and is like, look, I need to know who this Mason guy is. Like, what the fuck is going on? And Womack basically says, look, he was a British SAS soldier. He was James Bond. He was a British.
He's totally James Bond.
He's totally James Bond, and I think that also elevates this movie. Yeah, that you're like, he's basically James Bond, and that makes it so much cooler.
Watched this video on YouTube that somebody had made, basically lining up.
Oh, I think I've seen that before. Yeah, and it works
really
perfectly.
And
because it is down to like the dates and everything.
Stuff I don't completely buy, but certain things like the fact that 63,
the years line up. Yeah,
lines up with Dr. No, and then him getting possibly captured at the end of Dr. No and escaping.
Yeah,
and then him. There's something to do with Hong Kong, and then there's a thing about up to 73 where that fits with the rest of the movies that he could have got captured.
Yeah.
After, so it really does.
It's great.
The timeline really does fit in.
And what a wonderful way to kind of end Connery's Bond. If that was, it's a really nice send off for a character.
It kind of does mean that you have to take. Even though it doesn't make sense, because it's supposed to be the same Bond, it does mean that anybody after Bond, anybody after Connery is not the original Bond.
Yeah.
If you take this as James Bond, sort of thing.
But I've always loved this theory. I don't often like movie theories that people come up with. This is one of those few exceptions where I'm like, oh, that fits so nicely.
Yeah.
And I do wonder if that was the intent anyway, that they were like, oh, I've always wanted to make a Bond movie.
It certainly, because of the way it fits so nicely, it certainly feels like they did.
Feels intentional, doesn't it?
Hmm? Yeah.
But
and we missed something with Connery and when he goes to so he says he's going to shoot the
hostages.
Yeah, and he's got they've got the guns on this poor hostage, and he puts his gun right in Hummel puts his gun right in Mason's face, and you can see Mason's looking in his eyes. He says, "Oh, are you going to shoot me now?" sort of thing.
Right. Yeah.
And basically, he's totally reading Hummel's intentions.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So anyway, yeah. So it turns out that he was disavowed, but obviously Mason was disavowed by the SAS when he was caught. He had personal files of J. Edgar Hoover.
Yep.
And a bunch of other stuff, as we'll find out later. He's got this microfilm that he never gave up, and they kept him without. They detained him without charge.
Yeah, without trial.
He says like it's weird in the way it's delivered, but it kind of makes it works, but it's weirdly delivered. Where he's like, "Oh, we kept him without trial until he gave up the film. He never gave up the film."
Yeah.
So he's basically been locked away and forgotten all of this time. Mason, meanwhile, they're locked up in Alcatraz, and he's giving Goodspeed some kind of talking, and Goodspeed, and the whole time Mason's doing something with his bedding. We see he's like turning it into this knotted rope, and he's like, Goodspeed's like, this is all great and all, but there's one question I'd love to know the answer to. How did you get out of your cell? And just as he does that, the whole thing opens, and he just walks by. He's like, trade secrets, son.
Yeah, and I like you get just before that when they capture him and he says, "I'll take pleasure in gutting you, boy," and he's just going over that line. "I'll take pleasure in gutting you, boy." There's a lot of adolescent angst here, angry at my father energy going on.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's.
He says, "What in the name of Satan's Zeus's butthole?" Is one of the...
Yeah. Mason also says at this point that he knew that if he gave up the microfilm, he'd just be killed and it would be made to look like a suicide. Yeah. So he knew it was a no-win situation for him anyway. There was no benefit to him giving up the microfilm, so he might as well have just stayed locked up, because that meant they'd keep him alive at least. Mm-hmm. And he said he kind of clung on to the unlikely dream that he would one day reunite with his daughter. It's the one thing that kept him going through the years.
Yeah. And he says, he's going. I'm done.
Yeah, well, that's it. They get to the beach, and he's like, "I'm off."
And he says to him, he's going to kill all those people. He's like, "No," he says, "I saw it in his eyes."
Yeah, he's not a killer.
He's going to do it.
He's not. Well, he's a killer. He's not a murderer. He says he wouldn't kill civilians. It's not in his nature. Which is true. Unfortunately, though. So anyway, he Goodspeed's like, "Okay, well, I'll go do it by myself then." Fine. Yeah. I'll do it by myself. He's immediately captured. Yeah. But Mason rescues him, and he's like, "Look, the last time I swam this channel, I was your age, so I'm fucked either way." Which, as I said, doesn't make sense later on, because there is the thing, but fine.
Yeah, and he says, "Plus, I didn't like the idea of your daughter not having a father."
Yeah, I'm assuming he was going for the sub and changed his mind, and just like it was a clever line. Yeah. So the deadline arrives. And no ransom is paid. Baxter's like, ask for more time, and he's like, no, we called their bluff, and that's it. They called our bluff, and we didn't act, so we're screwed. But they're like, no, they'll believe you. Tony Todd's like, they'll believe you if you fire one of the rockets. Fire one of the rockets, and so he agrees. He's like, okay, fine, we'll do it. So they launch one, and obviously Goodspeed and Mason are horrified as they see this thing launch towards a football stadium full of people. But at the last minute, Hummel changes diverts the rocket basically at the last minute into the ocean, where it detonates, presumably harmlessly. We'll not think too much about that.
Yeah, I mean, you would have thought maybe it would probably take out a lot of the marine life that was there. But
it's probably an ecological disaster, but fine.
Yeah.
So Hummel basically diverts it. Obviously, his second in command knows exactly what's happened immediately. Tony Todd takes a little while to figure it out, but then he does. He finally figures it out, and he's like, "Look, they called our bluff. We failed. It's fucked." Tony Todd and other guy, Fry. Yeah, Fry and Darrow basically say, "No, sod this. We're mercenaries. We work for money."
We became mercenaries. We want our fucking money.
Yeah, I want my money. And they're going to make good on their threat. You get this great scene where Goodspeed and Mason are kind of arriving just to kind of witness the end of this. Baxter pulls a gun on the general, and he's like, "I'm sorry, sir. It's been an absolute honor. It's been my life's honor serving with you." But as he said, it's over. But then, of course, he fires on the mutineers.
Catches Todd in the shoulder, doesn't he?
Catches Todd in the shoulder, but of course...
You're a bad shot, dude. You should have shot him in the fucking face.
Yeah, totally. He's been a major too long. So Baxter's killed, and Hummel is, like, fatally wounded.
Yeah.
Mason turns up, obviously opening fire, and they all kind of run away or they disperse anyway, because Mason manages to shoot at them enough. And Hummel is dying as he tells Goodspeed where the last rocket is. He's like, what have I done? And he's like, tell us where it is. Tells him it's in the lower lighthouse. So Goodspeed heads to the lighthouse whilst Mason covers him from the rooftops. One of my favorite quotes. We missed one of my favorite quotes when Goodspeed's shouting a bit on the beach, and he's like, "Some sniper's gonna get his ass."
Yeah.
I love that line.
There's that bit where he says, "Okay," and he's okay.
Yeah. So Mason's covering from the rooftops. Goodspeed disarms the last rocket, but Darrow corners him, Tony Todd.
Yep.
And he's like, I don't even need a gun, I'll kill you with a knife. And he puts his gun down, the typical bad guy thing. Should have just shot Goodspeed, but he didn't. And Goodspeed's like, tell me, do you like music? He's like, I hate pussy shit, or something like that. And he's like,
do you like Rocket Man? He says, I don't like soft shit.
Soft shit, that's right, yeah. And he's like, well, I only asked because you're the Rocket Man. And of course, Tony Todd does not put two and two together, that he stood right in front of this rocket. But it's a great shot. He shoots the rocket. He launches the rocket, which obviously is now disabled, but the rocket launches and sends Tony Todd through the window and out of the lighthouse.
Yeah.
But Fry turns up and is attacking him, chasing him throughout the lighthouse. Finally, Goodspeed is like, no, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not putting up with it. And he basically lures him with the last guidance chip, doesn't he? He's got the last chip. And he basically lures him into attacking. The jets, obviously, we see are approaching.
We also have that scene with Mason fighting that big dude.
Oh, yeah.
And he says to him that they're fighting, and he says to him, "Did I tell you my old man was Irish?"
Yeah,
which is obviously clearly supposed to bring up the whole Irish English thing. It's like, well, one, he's fucking Scottish.
He's Scottish, and they make a big point of saying he's from Glasgow earlier in the movie.
Yeah, and two, it's like, why would you tell someone? Because, by the way, my old man's Irish.
Yeah, just so you know. Yeah, but anyway, Fry overpowers Goodspeed, and he starts to strangle him. But of course, echoing back to the start of the film, Goodspeed grabs one of the vials, like the sphere of green goo.
When he was taking the chip out,
it fell
off, didn't it? And he managed to stop it rolling away.
Chucks it into his mouth and crushes his jaw, causing the vial to explode. Of course, Fry dies horrendously. His flesh melts away and he's like convulsing and shit. Goodspeed's been exposed, but his skin's all right for some reason, and he stumbles away. I guess the idea is that if it gets on you, it melts your skin, but the aerosol form will just cause you to die horribly. I don't know.
It's a bit
whatever.
Looks good anyway.
Yes, but of course
we don't really want Nicolas Cage to melt.
No, not really. But of course he has to do the syringe thing, which was his big fear from the start of the movie. But he overcomes it and he injects himself in the heart, taking the antidote, and makes a miraculous recovery just in time to grab two flares and run out and signal that the threat is ended, but not before one of the jets is like, too late, buddy. Launched already.
They get the call. One of the guys that are watching on the shore, or what?
Yes.
Yellow smoke or green smoke, whatever.
Green, I think it's green smoke for good, because that was the SEAL said earlier in the movie. They were like, "Oh yeah, we'll pop the green smoke to say that you've accomplished the mission," and All will be well. Otherwise, we're going to nuke the island. So yeah, one of the
that is a great shot though. Of
it's awesome.
Flares
coming out with the flares, and then you get the jet flying up with the explosion and stuff.
Yeah, it's fucking awesome.
It's great. Yeah. Goodspeed sent flying into the bay from the explosion. But Mason reappears and grabs him, pulls him out of the water back to shore. Paxton calls on the radio, as we see as Carla kind of crying, thinking that he's dead. Goodspeed answers, much to Carla's relief, and Womack immediately is like, "Where's
Mason? Yeah,
where's Mason?" He's like, "I know, he's been killed." And then we get the great shot when what's his name turns up, and he's like, "How did he die?" And he's like, "Oh, he disintegrated." And of course he knows. Sorry, vaporized. Yeah, he's vaporized.
The body can do that.
Yeah, well, you get the bit with Thingy, like, knowingly he's like, okay, I know he's alive.
Yeah,
fine.
he smiles at him,
wink,
doesn't
wink.
He? He's dead.
He knows. I think he hates Womack as much as anyone else, you know.
Yeah.
And then Womack turns up and he's like, the body can do that. He's like, oh yeah. Honestly, take my word for it.
He's blown out to sea.
Yeah, blown out to sea. But of course, prior to this, Mason said to him, "Hey, are you planning a honeymoon? Because I suggest you go to Kansas." And he was like, I was thinking of Maui. He's like, no, this is better. Go to Kansas. And he gives him this note saying that the front pew leg of one of the chairs in the front pew is hollow or whatever. Of course, we see at the end him running from the church.
Yeah.
With Carla. They're in the car, just married. And they speed away as Goodspeed looks at this microfilm and he's like, "Hey, honey, do you want to know who really shot JFK?" Yeah. That's the end of the movie. I like The Rock.
I love The Rock.
It's dumb, but it's really fun.
It's
well acted enough.
I've said it before. It's one of those movies. If I catch it on TV, I will sit and watch it.
100%. Absolutely.
It's right up there with the Con Air and Eat Where Eagles Dare and Kelly's Heroes. Whenever those movies are on, I find them. I immediately sit and just watch them.
Yeah, I agree. It will if it's on, it's an instant watch.
Yeah,
for sure.
And they did plan a sequel.
Did they?
Well, they wanted to do a sequel, which was going to be basically Godspeed going on the run with this microfilm, and him and his wife sort of going around, and him getting Mason, calling Mason to help him, sort of thing. And it was them sort of getting away, and it never came. Nothing ever really came of it, which is a shame. I like the idea of that. It would have been interesting to see almost like a road movie sort of thing. I like the idea. It does
feel it does feel a little like we see Goodspeed. It would have been nice. I would have liked one scene to have seen Mason with his daughter.
Yeah.
To round out the end of the movie, personally.
Yeah.
But it's fine. I like I said, I love this movie. It's kind of dumb. The acting definitely pulls it through. The soundtrack is stunning.
Oh yeah.
And it's, and like I said, it's my favorite Michael Bay movie, which is a low bar, but it is. I will stand by this movie. This is fun. It's a lot of fun.
It's hands down the best Michael Bay movie. It really is. And I love there was stuff like the script there was a thing about this script being put through so many hands, and there was a dispute with it, and it was put away. So some of the people didn't get credited, and two of the people that are uncredited on this script are Aaron Sorkin and Quentin Tarantino. They both worked on this script and are uncredited.
Huh.
So that's interesting. And I love little things like Sean Connery was didn't want to, at the end of the day, didn't want to go back across the bay every day.
Right.
So he basically built him a cottage on Alcatraz just for him, and they just stayed there. And there was something to do with the when they were basically the suits were like getting antsy with Bay, and he was like really worried he had to go and meet them. And apparently Connery, who was in full golf gear, was like, well, where are you going? And he said to him, oh, well, I've got to go to this meeting with the suits.
Yeah.
He says, oh, can I come? And he said, yeah, sure. So he went to this meeting, and it's the boardroom opens, and he walked in and was like, and then Sean Connery followed him in, and all the execs were like, ooh, Sean Connery. And Sean Connery basically said, oh, he's doing a really, really good job. You should just leave him alone. And they did.
Wow.
They basically, Sean Connery clearly was the draw there. They were like, oh, yeah, if Sean Connery says...
If Sean Connery says it's fine, it's clearly fine.
It's fine. So, he walked away. Brilliant.
Fantastic.
Oh, I love it. It's just such a brilliantly fun movie.
It is. It's fun. That is basically my description of the movie too. It's just fun.
Pure, big explosions fun with phenomenal performances.
Yeah.
Genuinely well written characters and well performed characters.
Yeah.
And some truly beautiful shots and great music.
Yeah, absolutely. But yes, so that was The Rock. We will be back next week, of course, with our usual review stuff. I need to watch some things. But yes, until then, stay safe, take care, and we will catch you next time.